I was driving, I think, over Weld Pass and thought, God, this is the portrait of any biodiversity. And I'd love to get a project going that works across the landscape. And meantime, I was aware of some projects in North Island and also down Canterbury that were concentrated on ecological corridors, which is a way of bringing biodiversity back to a productive landscape like we've got here in Wairau. And so I held a workshop back in 2023 and put it out there, does South Marlborough want an ecological corridor project? And yeah, 50 people came, which is quite a big deal for my workshops. Normally I only get 20 or 30. So 50 people came, which goes to show that the interest was there. And from that workshop, you know, we were brainstorming and writing notes down, and you know, people had lots of challenges, but were also excited about the idea. And from that, we formed a working group. Jan was one of the original ones. Helen was one of the original ones. And since then, we've had people come and go. We've now got Kristen on. You were one of the original ones. Oh, all my old cohorts here. They went on the working group, and from that big idea of do we want an ecological corridor project in South Marlborough, we've narrowed it down over the last 3 years, and I'm quite proud of what we've achieved. So that's what my talk is going to be about tonight. But it's also, I'm going to be talking about sort of why we need to think landscape and not just our own individual projects, hence the title. So there it is mapped there. So often when we talk about the Wairau project, people kind of go, I don't live next to the Wairau River, it doesn't concern me. Actually, if you live in this huge, great catchment, it does concern you. So what we are is a community-led conservation initiative. So yeah, we're totally a charitable base that brings together everyone in our community, everyone in our catchment, whether you're a landowner, iwi, business, community group, or just someone who has an urban garden in Blenheim. What we want to do is work together to restore biodiversity across our catchment. So we've got our vision there. So we're not a single project or a single site. We're kind of like a layer above everyone, but working with everyone. We're not trying to take over any project. We're there to support all the projects, whether that's from an individual person or a community group, do undertake restoration. These are all our current working group members. We've got a huge amount of experience on our working group. We're really lucky. Everyone here has got some kind of ecological background or passion, and they do their own projects, or they work for a community group, or you know, just go and do their stuff, as well as just because they're so passionate about it. And alongside that environmental passion is they've also got an immense amount of skills in GIS, website design. We've got planner, we've got someone on council. Yeah, it's just amazing. We've got Alexander over there who works for Salm. So we've got a huge amount of skills that when you're working with a holistic program is really important to tap into. All right, back to sort of the landscape idea. So across the district, and I've got a habit of talking too fast and then running out of oxygen, but I'll try and slow down. Across the district, we've got some amazing projects happening, whether it be on community land or private land, and we've also got an extensive amount of public conservation land, which some of it's in good nick and some of it's not in good nick, but regardless, it's there doing its thing. But what we don't have is connection between the different projects. We are basically lots of little islands of biodiversity in a sea of ecological desert. And when that happens, these habitat fragments become really vulnerable to fire, as probably you all were here back in the Boxing Day fires that wiped out Sutherland Stream, QE2 block, disease, drought, predators, pests. They're so vulnerable and so easily can be become genetically depauperate. So when you don't get individuals of the same species coming and going and bringing their genetic material in to keep it robust, you get very depauperate in your genetic resilience and makes you weaker as a population. So without having these pathways, species can't move across, a lot of species can't move across this ecological desert. And then, yeah, as a landscape, it becomes really, really vulnerable. So we need to start thinking beyond our own projects. But what if we think of our projects as one piece in the jigsaw? And how can we link them up without impeding on productive land? We need productive land to feed our population and create society. Well, there's a whole lot of these little waste areas. You know, they might have a few rotten cars in them, or they might just be full of weeds, but actually they might not be very big, but they can be what we call stepping stones. And I'm sure I'm telling you what you already know. There's stepping stones that birds or lizards or whatever can move between the fragments. They might only be able to rest in it for half a day, but it's enough to keep them moving across to the next good bit of landscape. We've got a whole network of waterways, whether you call them streams or ditches or whatever. They're there to be restored. And not only can they be ecological pathways, but by restoring them, we're improving our water quality. And let's move away from this idea of a monocultural shelter belt, although we're even losing those. But and then when we need to put shelter in it, put it into a multi-species native hedgerow. England does hedgerows amazingly, but then they don't have a lot of other stuff. So if we start, then we can use these things to connect our different habitat fragments. And they're providing the resource on a micro scale, but it's the connection that we need. So that's what we call them, ecological corridors. So what they do is reconnect habitat so that wildlife and plants can disperse between fragments. It reduces extinction risk by meaning those small fragments are more genetically robust. And if we do happen to lose one of these fragments, because there's pathways to it, it means that it can be rehabilitated faster than if it was just denuded. Hopefully with that more robust gene flow, they're more tolerant to climatic change. So, you know, droughts and what have you, they're able to withstand it. For species that need greater resources, like kere or tui, having it over a landscape provides more resources. Productive land use is benefits as well. There's an immense amount of benefits from having native on your farm or your vineyard. Shelter, creating those microclimates, shade, improved water quality, home to a whole lot of invertebrates that become your biological pest control. And let's not forget this is so important, that we have, these can be our social connection, our learning opportunities, and they just make us feel good. So our theme, removing from the individual to the collective, I'm sure you recognise some of these rat bags in here. So people are doing amazing things, and often these projects are actually really healthy because you're not just planting, you're doing the weeding and the pest control and everything else. But we need to look beyond the fence. What else is just beyond that we can connect to? How can we do this better? And how can we do it together? So I'm going to read you some stories. So a community member volunteers at a community planting day at their favourite dog walking spot. Joined by others, many hands make light work. Conservation's at struck. Connections are made and friendships are formed. Inspired, they decide to replace part of their lawn with native plants. And then they encourage their street to do the same. Soon, birds and insects are moving between gardens, parks and waterways. Community hubs are formed, and existing community groups feel like they're no longer shouldering the load. Spending time outdoors improves the well-being and strengthens those neighbourhood connections. And as more people get involved, these small pockets of habitat link up, forming wildlife corridors that stretch across the landscape. Meanwhile, up the valley, a farmer uses the support from the Wairau Nature Network to plant native trees and grasses along the stream running through one of their least productive paddocks. Over time, stock are better sheltered, erosion reduces, and water quality improves downstream. Native birds begin moving between remnants, using the planted margins as safe pathways. The farmer enjoys seeing keru and tui return, and along with talking about stock prices, he talks about these birds he's seen with neighbouring landowners. And hearing what's been achieved, they start planting too, and gradually a network of connected riparian corridors form across the catchment. Back down on the flats, a Marlborough winery has a team day to plant native vegetation around their wetlands and vineyard edges. These plantings help manage runoff, improve soil health, and provide habitat for insects and birds that support a healthy vineyard. Visitors enjoy walking through the restored areas, learning about the land's natural history alongside its wine story. And the great experience that they have that day means that when they go to the local supermarket, they recognise that brand. Neighbouring vineyards are inspired to take part. And over time, individual restoration projects link together, creating a connected landscape that benefits biodiversity, water quality, and the region's reputation. And back in Blenheim, a local business partners with a community group to support restoration. Their staff take part in planting days, and they learn how their workplace can contribute to a healthier environment. While their sponsorship broadens this impact, the business gains a good market reputation, let's be honest, but actually they take pride from investing in the local landscape, while restored sites help reduce flood risk, improve biodiversity, and strengthen community resilience. Other businesses follow their lead, and together their contributions help create a connected network of habitats that benefits nature, people, and the regional economy. So what changes when we start to work and think together? So working together means thinking not just about your own project, but the wider landscape. And if you think about that landscape strategically, then we start seeing and being able to fill in those gaps in the connection. And then coordination delivers the bigger outcomes. So if you're doing pest control, but your neighbour's not, well, you're just continually mopping up the pests that are coming from their land. But if they're doing pest control and then their neighbour's doing pest control and that person over there is doing pest control, suddenly it all starts to make a whole lot more difference. And there might be resources that we can share. And of course, we have to share our success stories. So back to the Wairau Nature Network. How can we turn our vision into action? Our main driver is that we want to increase native restoration by 15% by 2045. 2045 is just kind of 20-ish years. You know, it seems like a nice round number. 15% has more scientific basis to it. There was an organisation called Eco Index that had a whole lot of ecologists that had worked out that if you can keep or restore habitat to 15% of its cover, then your the local populations that live in that can maintain in a robust way, maintain their populations in a healthy way. If it gets below 15%, then things start to teeter and potentially have local extinctions. Wairau habitats sit between 4% and 11%, depending on what it is. Wetlands is obviously a lot less in them than, say, our high country shrubby habitats. So that's our big goal. And to do that, as I say, we're not there to take over people's projects. We're kind of not even set ourselves up to be the doers. We've set ourselves up to be the support crew, the cheerleaders to get other people motivated to do land. Remembering that we're also working not only public land but private land as well. And part of that is making restoration knowledge practical and accessible. Because talking to people in the communities that I do, people say, oh, I just don't know where to start. You know, I want to do it, and I just don't know where to start. And I don't know where to find the information. Well, the information is out there. Every industry has a little resource library on their computers, dairy, NZ, beef and lamb, DOC, council, but it's all scattered in the ether. So what we wanted to do is have a one-stop shop where we bring all the resources that we quite like and we've ground truthed them in one place for people to go to. That's one thing we want to do. We also want to strengthen, back to the restoration knowledge. We want to hold workshops so people can come and learn from others and from each other. That's the most key thing, because there's so much information in this room alone, let alone out in the community. We want to strengthen collaboration, and we want to use mapping to target and prioritise our effort, as well as showcase our projects. So I want to go back to this picture. This was called our Connecting Waterways workshop that we held March or February or something. And this was at request from Tim Barton, who you might know works at Grovetown, saying, oh, we want to start looking beyond Grovetown. So we're like, oh, hey, let's hold a workshop. And got a really good turnout. So this is Pete Hamill in the fluoro from council, and he's standing in front of a really degraded waterway where we held our workshop at Grovetown School. So there's a really degraded, we call them waterways, but some people might call them a ditch. They used to be a waterway. This one here, the school planted up and it looks amazing. So during our workshop, we were comparing the two, so connected streams, that one was degraded and one was restored. And we were learning and talking and sharing. And then Nick Dan, who was she's also on the working group, but she was at the workshop as well. And she was like, oh, this just seems too easy. Let's see if we can fix this little bit of stretch of waterway. So she contacted the school. She talked to her colleagues in council, and she talked to Trees for Marlborough. And then just like that, honestly, just like that, everyone agreed. And they're like, well, let's plant up that tree. And it sounds like a great idea. So in early June, that's what the school kids are going to do. I mean, so restoration doesn't have to be hard. You just have to start with the conversations. And then another example, and I'm just buzzing about this because it's just happened in the last 2 days. I went to a planting day at Onamalutu that was run by, Onamalutu project. It's a community project. And I went along just to plant trees because I needed to get out of the office and plant trees. And I was chatting to a teacher, and she says, oh, look, our students have grown all these trees and their original plan had fallen over, and I've got these trees that need to be planted. What can I do with them? It's like, well, let me talk to a few people and see if we can matchmake you. So, yeah, emailed the council and said, do you have any sites near the school? Because they want to do it in their community. And they're like, oh, actually, we do. So I was like, oh, I'm buzzing from that. It's just like having conversations. It's the first step. So easy. I know, it's not always that easy. Yeah. Just having the conversations, and you don't know what, it doesn't have to be me having the conversations. It can be all of you guys having conversations and just going, oh, if I connect this person with that person, what can we achieve with that? Yeah, it's just the start. So this is our Wairau Information Hub, Tāmata, and the name was gifted to us by Rangatane. It means to hold knowledge or share knowledge. And this is our resources page that I was talking about on our information hub. It's just one page on there. There's also the map, which I'll get to, an events calendar, thanks to Forest and Bird for that wee gem of an idea. It's just gone live this week. Bit of news of what we're up to. The funding library, because I know there is quite a few grants out there. They're all horribly oversubscribed, but they are there. But how are you meant to know about them? We've tried to capture all the ones we know about. Sometimes we're like, there should be a resource on this, why isn't there? So if we've got the capacity, we create create. Sometimes it's just a little fact sheet or a little video. So that's our toolbox, and then our usual contact page and stuff. So if you haven't been, it's easy. This is Haumai. Again, the name was gifted to rangatane, and it goes together. Te mata is to share knowledge. Haumai is to work together in common agreement. And this is our Wairau eco map. So if you remember back in 2023, we're having our scoping meeting, and everyone was saying, oh, we just need a stock take of what we've got, what else is out there. We don't know what else is out there. How can we connect the dots if we don't know what's out there? And we're like, well, that's a really good idea. And the working group were like, that's a very good idea, but how do we do that? I think we probably spent about 18 months going, how are we going to do that? That's actually, mapping is actually really hard. And then one day I received a phone call from Rob Beesons, who owns a company called Map HQ. And he said, I've just read about your project. I love it. I really want to see Wairau, bloom. And I want to create you a map. I'm like, okay then. That sounds amazing. It has been amazing. It's just such a gift that he's given us, because honestly, there's hours and weeks and months gone into this project. So I'm not quite sure where this is. No, this is what it does is, it maps. Well, it takes us finding the projects, drawing them on, which isn't hard, and then adding some information. So obviously, you guys have got your little video that tells about your Taylor River planting. It's got some more words about the Forest and Birds Taylor River project, the map of where it is and where you can start linking. Obviously, you scroll out and you can see everyone else's as well. And also, what we've added is what should be there or what used to be there. So when we're planting on Sunday morning and you're digging through those stones, just imagine yourself in a lush swamp forest of kakatea and pukatea, with what ferns and mosses crowding the forest floor. So Rob wanted something a little bit more of a story than just your boring scientific, what was here, what's missing. He wanted to be a little bit more visionary about what was there, and I think that's really lovely. And Christopher, seeing you, some of Christopher's photos was gifted to us as well, so thank you for those. I mean, everyone has contributed. It's just amazing. So again, you can find that with the website wairanaturnetwork.maphq, but it's on our website. Right, so pause for a minute. So we're about working and supporting with others. And up until recently, which I'll get to, is we've worked across the catchment. We don't have our own project space. That means that we've got to be a little bit creative and a little bit collaborative when we want to do our goals, our kaupapa. So, but that can have so many actually really good benefits as when you're looking to have a partner to do something with. So an example is we ran a planting workshop. It was called All About Plants or something. It was Restoration 101. We held it at Clo'onri Vineyard, and I gave a presentation, a bit of blah blah, and then John from Clo'onri, the sustainability manager, took us for a tour around the vineyard and showed us all their amazing restoration work. Then he got us to put in 200 trees, and man, those participants could dig some holes. We got those in within an hour because we could smell the barbecue that they were cooking, and we had this amazing gourmet lunch, and it was such a lovely day. A lot of all these amazing conversations happening. I think that's almost the best part of the workshop. Over that man there is, I knew I'd forget his name, Tim Curran, Dr. Tim Curran. And so I had a webinar with Tim and also Steve Trigg from FENS about low flammability planting. So a lot of Tim's work was testing the flammability properties of native trees. Some are really flammable, like we all know Kānuka is, and some are not flammable or not very flammable. And his whole he's got a whole lot of students that were putting trees in, well, bits of trees in barbecues and seeing how fast they took to burn on fire. It was really fascinating. And one of those sort of tools that he talked about in that webinar, there was quite a few, but one of the tools he talked about was green fire breaks, was creating a buffer between your kānuka block, which is highly flammable, and the neighbour's pine trees. You can actually plant a buffer of non-flammable plants, and it might slow it down. And I thought this was a pretty cool idea, but hold that thought. This one, I was on a workshop, I was a participant on a workshop for work, and we were supposed to be looking at poplars, which are a very useful tree. I had my back to the poplars, and I was looking at Cloudy Bay's riparian planting, going, oh, that's amazing. Bannocks Road, Brookby Bannocks. I was saying, oh, that's an amazing planting. So I gave him an email and said, oh, can I come out with you and look at your planting? Because I really liked it and I wanted to put it on our map. And he said, yeah, people love sharing their restoration projects. They're always generally happy to show them off. And it's an amazing way to learn from each other as well. I've been doing this for a few years, and every time I go to someone else's restoration, I'm always learning something new. It's so cool. Anyway, before we went out to the Bannocks Road block, he said, I want to show you my wastewater restoration. I'm like, okay, wastewater. Yay. Anyway, this is so cool. Like, wineries produce a lot of wastewater and they treat it, and then they have to spray it or get rid of it. And most of them just spray it on a paddock full of rank grass. Cloudy Bay have planted all out in flaxes and carrots and different native. And I was so excited about this. I made a little video and put it on our social media, and it went viral. Like, had 100 views, which is viral for us. But it was really, really cool. And there's 33 of these wastewater blocks in Wairau catchment. I mean, I think if we could plant them all up, that would be really cool. It's those stepping stones. Waste of space, but no, let's turn them into biodiversity hotspots. This one here was, Kristen and I and Angela just did this one. It was so cute that managed to get connected to the Chinese migrant community, and they wanted to have an opportunity to get their kids out in nature. So we took them to Grovetown Lagoon. Again, we're using other people's sites, promoting other people's sites, and we took them on a nature treasure hunt and had a picnic tea and then went to the bird hide. It was just really lovely, and hopefully they come to some more of our events. So yes, when you're working with others, you get creative, but you get so much more benefits from it. Right, I talked about not having our own site. Well, it's all very well to have a webinar on something or a workshop, but people really learn from seeing, and we just really wanted a site. We're all doers. We just wanted to plant our own site, really, and get some trees in the ground. But also we wanted to use that opportunity as not only to restore an area, but to use that opportunity of demonstrating various restoration techniques. And so this is where our green fire break ideas come in. So on the 2nd of June, we're teaming up with Junior Lank here, who you guys teamed up with last year. And we're going to have a community planting day and a school planting day. And we're going to plant a green fire break, which is the first of our sort of demonstration sites. And as we get funding, because we need to fundraise to get trees, we'll do others, like looking at biochar maybe to help with water retention, or planting up a keruru forest, or there's immense amount of ideas that we just need to find money to and do. And this is at Thompson's Ford Road, and it's council land, and they've let us adopt it. It's about a hectare, so potentially could be 10,000 trees. So it'll take us a few years to plant up, but it's public accessible, so hopefully people will just come, walk the dog, have a picnic, whatever. It'll be a lovely place. So if you're free on June the 6th, I better get the date right. Just come along and put in an odd tree, and we'll give you a barbecue. What does success look like? We want green corridors across our landscape. We want wetlands restored at meaningful scale. All those shelter belts, we need shelter belts. Hopefully they're native. We want to be an example, a shining example around the country of what a connected restoration looks like and collaborative restoration looks like. We would love for nature to be recognised as an asset that politicians are excited about and fund. And we want Kiruru moving freely from the hills to our plains. If you like our shirts. So why Kiruru? Ecological corridors are kind of like a bit of a random thing, and people don't really feel emotively connected to them. So we wanted to have a keystone species. There was tui to the town, and you guys have got the daisy right on your logo. So we wanted our own species, and we tossed around different species of green gecko, but no one sees them. The daisy, you guys already got it. Tui to town's already been done, but we decided on Kiruru. And the Kiruru should be there because we know from our mapping that the Wairau lowlands used to be podocarp and broadleaf forest. They should be there. They're kind of not there. And so when we decided that, and they're also if you think long term, which restoration is, it's going to take decades to get podocarp forests in there. But Kiruru are long lived, and they're essential for those podocarp forests to be there, or tawa forest, for example, matai, meadow. We need the Kiruru to bring the seeds in to help it naturally keep functioning as a healthy ecosystem. So then I put out a survey in our newsletter saying, who's seen Kiruru? And because a lot of people thought we were slightly mad, why would you have a species that's hardly there? And I got some guy said to me, I saw one whitebaiting down at the Opawa River mouth. Well, that's pretty cool. Anyway, I had this landowner say, I'll send you a video I took this year. If I play this.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 wood pigeons.
Pretty cool, eh? He's actually seen 17, and that's at the top of Brookbury Road. So they're here. In fact, the Cloudy Bay Mark told me, yeah, we get Kiruru, but they've been flying into our windows. I'm like, stop cleaning your windows. So that's cool. They're here in very low numbers. Not there. But we can. They're enough that we can bring them down, and wouldn't that just show what success looks like? It would be amazing. They need the tall trees, so we've got to get busy. We've got to, what's the saying is the best time to plant a tree was yesterday, and the next best is today. So we need to get busy. Sunday, Taylor River. Like all good community projects, we need money to achieve. We're limited by our capacity. And we have had some really good partnerships and funders, mainly in our administration space, which is terribly critical, but also a little bit boring. So now we've got our administration kind of set up a little bit. We want to move into fundraising to actually start doing more of our demonstration and other restoration. But these guys have got us started. So New Zealand Land Care Trust, so I wear 2 hats. They've been supporting the project in my time. And the Rata Foundation as well. And then, different organisations have helped with our website. We've got Map HQ, we've got our amazing local partners who just put in time, in time kind is amazing. As well as our volunteers. We've got, volunteers on our working group and putting an immense amount of time in as well. So how can you be part of the movement? Well, you already are, because you're in our catchment and you're already doing amazing stuff. But we'd love, if you're a social media person, connect with our pages. Our YouTube channel's filling up quite nicely with really cool little short videos. We've got a newsletter, goes out quarterly, so if you want to be on that. I just want to do a bit of a mention of our Trees for Marlborough partnership. So Trees for Marlborough is part of Salm's Garden Charitable Trust. And of course, they employ or they offer volunteer work for people that are intellectually disadvantaged and give them employment or training and a purpose, because everyone does, despite what we say, like going to work. And so they've set themselves up that people can get their trees for their restoration projects from Trees for Marlborough, and that money helps fund the staff. Also, they've got a page there which is if people or businesses want to donate money or donate trees, more to the point, or donate money that grows trees, Wairau Nature Network takes the trees and we can plant them during our community planting day in a publicly accessible site that people can come and enjoy. So I think that's a really amazing thing for Marlborough. It will help us get going. That's me, run out of puff, which is lucky because I've run out of slides.